Hey everybody on YouTube, this is Tom again in Western North Carolina, and this is kind of the start of the shaving horse process, yeah. And anyways, I've got a board here, a piece of wood, 4 feet long. It's a 2x12 yellow pine, and I'm going to show you how I lay this board out to make the rails on the video, on the shaving horse. And the first thing I do, and I can tell you right now that I have jointed the edges of these boards just so I know that they're straight and not got some weirdness about them that's going to mess me up when I go to draw my lines. So anyways, the first thing I do, and I choose which end I want to be the big end of the rail, and I've chosen this end, and I measure out 18 inches. And I try to put that mark pretty much in the middle of the board. But it doesn't matter, you'll find it. I've got my square here set at 5.5 inches. And I'm going to make a mark like that, down to that mark I just made, that 18-inch mark. And then I'm going to do that on the other side. I'm going to turn my back on you, but I'm going to do it on the other side of the board. Like that. And so now I've got 2 marks, 5.5 inch in from the end, and I'm eventually going to saw that line. There's like a 1/4 inch between the lines, but I'm going to saw right in the middle. Now I'm going to take my other square, I've got it set at 3.5. And down here, from the other direction, from that 18-inch mark, I'm going to go 3.5 inches. On that line. Again, I'm going to turn my back on you for a second. Through that line. So now I've got a line here and a line here and 2 lines right there. Now I'm going to take this radius, I'm not sure exactly what it is, but you can use a paint can or something like that. I think it's approximately 2.5 or 3 inch radius. And I'm going to, from this center right here down to these lines, I'm going to make a mark, a radius mark. I'm going to hold this board up and see if you can see that the way it looks a little bit better. But anyways, that's the first step. You got to lay it out. And now I'm going to saw it out. Let me show you how I saw it. I always saw this end here first. I'm going to saw this right down the middle. I put my safety glasses on, put my earmuffs on, and I've got this here circular saw. It's about 30 years old, but it still works. I sawed that. You can see how far I sawed it. Right about to there. I'm turning it around. I'm going to saw these 2 lines right down to in that area. And I'm going to leave the line on both of these. If you know what that means, I'm leaving the line. I stopped that cut before I got to the radius. You don't want to cut into that radius. Okay, I'm yelling at you because I got to hear my son. Sorry about that, everybody. Anyway, I'm going to cut this one. Okay, so I've got 3 cuts made in there that I've made with a skill saw. This one goes right up to here, and these 2 go down like that. This saw's not quite as loud, but I'm going to take this little, whatever you call this, a reciprocating saw, and I'm going to cut these radiuses. This piece here that I just cut out of the middle is going to turn into the front leg. I'll cut that end off when I get to it. Now right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little bit of router work. And it turns out that just about every piece on this shaving horse gets the corners relieved with a chamfer bit. And I know that if I do a certain amount of routing right now on these 2 pieces, that it's going to save when I go to sand these pieces, which are going to get sanded on all 4 sides. It reduces the area that needs to get sanded, and especially on this edge, these edges right here, it really helps that you just get rid of some of the wood that needs to be sanded. And I'm going to come back later and run this tool on it after it's sanded, and it's the way I do it. I'm telling you that. Here goes. Lift them over. Okay, so there is my 2 rails rough sawed out, and you can see that by doing it the way I just did, if you look at those ends, that really looks good because those are kind of like book match. They're very similar to each other, and maybe even on this end they'll be similar also. But anyways, that's my roughed out rails. I didn't look at the clock, so I don't know how much time. So anyways, I'm going to set those aside, and I'm going to show you how I cut out some of the other pieces. And you can see my sacrificial boards that I've cut a lot of pieces out already on these boards, but they're still working. So the first one I'm going to cut out is some legs. And again, here's another piece of 2x12. I've jointed the edges just so they're flat and sort of defect free, I'm going to take my skill saw, and I've got a saw guide. I call this a saw guide. I'm going to put it in here. And I've got a mark on it right there. And that mark is 4 inches. And if you've watched some of these previous videos and I told you about the plan that's available, on the plan it will say 3.5. And that's okay, 3.5 works, but for some reason I have changed to 4. And I make this 4 inches. So again, I'm going to cut a piece off of this side, then I'm going to cut a piece off this side, and the grain on them will be pretty well matched also. Now here's a 2 back legs that I'm going to keep those together. I already marked them with a 1 on them so that I can keep them together so they don't get mixed up. But that's, roughed out 2 back legs. And I don't think I need to show you. Well, here's the leftover piece of wood, which will probably be able to be used for some of the 2.5-inch pieces of wood, approximate 2.5-inch pieces of wood that are used for the backup head. The backup head gets made the same size as the levers. And I've got some other wood right here that I could show you that exact same thing I just did with those legs, but you don't need to see that. The only difference is I just set the saw different. I'm going to set the saw, my setting for the levers and the backup head is 2.5 inches. It doesn't have to be exactly that. But I just like them to be the same as each other. There's some other pieces. There's some 3.5-inch pieces. But that's how I rough out wood. Anyways, that's the next step in making this shaving horse. And probably before I come back for the next step, I will have taken all this wood and run it through a drum sander that maybe you saw in the other video. That I'm going to surface, all the edges or all the sides. I'm going to do some of the pieces on their edge through the planer to get a smooth square side on all, so I have all 4 sides. But you guys, like I said before, you guys don't need to see all that. And it's just going to be, I'm going to do that when I come back. I'll show you how I lay out and cut the legs and cut and drill the levers and the rails and all that kind of stuff. And we're just going to move through this. And I hope you guys get something out of this and enjoy what you have and be thankful for it. So I'll see you another day.